Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm pleased to welcome you to the TASS newsroom. And today, we're broadcasting the 5th anniversary forum, Sociology of Health, New Forms of Interdisciplinary Synergy. The broadcast is available on Vkontakte, on the TASS website, and simultaneous interpretation will be available there as well. Dear colleagues, I'm pleased to welcome you to our event. Today we have very interesting speakers, very interesting reports, and we will talk about the sociology of health and how it has been transforming over the last 50 years. Of course, sociology of health is a field that has been actively developing since the 20th century. We have many achievements in this direction, which can be useful not only for healthcare organizers or marketers or sociologists. These are technologies that interest everyone in our country. Sociology of health studies the interaction of society, social determinants with health, individual health and public health. More and more, sociology is used to study how the population reacts to certain medical services, if we're talking about the healthcare system, and how these new methodologies, new integrated communications, can influence a person's decision to preserve their health, to change their health management program. And today, with our distinguished speakers, we will discuss innovations in this field and what else can we bring to the healthcare system to make it convenient, accessible, and of high quality. Please welcome our speakers. Today, we have with us Dmitry Mugenov, Director of the Department of Special Project IMEAS, Information and Analytical Center in Healthcare in Moscow. Also, Ignat Bogdan, Head of Medical and Sociological Research Center at the Research Institute for Healthcare Organization and Medical Management of Moscow Healthcare Department. With us is Yulia Goncharova, Director of Public Relations at the Foundation for Saving Seriously Ill Children Lifeline, Kirill Rodin, Director for Relations with Government Bodies at VCIOM, and we have several international speakers on the call with us. This is Professor Nelson Felice de Barras from State University of Campinas in Brazil, board member of Research Committee on Sociology of Health of the International Sociological Association, and Vesna Trifunovic, Research Associate of Institute of Ethnography at the Serbian Academy of Sciences and Art. I would like to present to you our welcome video for Sociology of Health Forum. Well, dear colleagues, we're about to begin. I will be the moderator today. My name is Elena Aksionova, Director of the Research Institute for Healthcare Organization and Medical Management, and I would like to ask Ignat to make his first presentation. He is the head of Medical and Sociological Research Center. This is the largest research center in Russia today that studies health issues as reflected in our society. And given that digital technologies are being actively introduced into sociology and the transformation of the healthcare system, especially in Moscow, today we will talk about digital trends that are affecting the change in sociology, the emergence of new organizational technologies, and their foundations for gamification and the formation of metaverses. Please, Ignat. Thank you very much, Elena. I'll take advantage of the fact that I'm on the organizing committee, and in my introductory report, I would like to give an overview of the 2 days of our forum and present studies relevant to the topics that we will be discussing this year. Choosing between focusing on numbers or focusing on interpretations due to time constraints, I have chosen today to focus on numbers, because, let's face it, numbers are what people love social service for. So there will be a lot of numbers, very fast-paced, and I will give you an overview. So, since our institute, our center, works primarily within the Moscow healthcare system, the data from the opinion polls will be devoted to Moscow. In particular, the study was conducted on a sample of 800 people. It was a random sample, a telephone survey. You can see the methodology on the slide. I will not dwell on it. This information is usually for specialists, but if you are interested, you can read it later. And first of all, I would like to touch on the topic of digital innovations in mass speech. As well understand, generative artificial intelligence has been, as young people say, a hype for the last year and a half. Generative AI is a subclass of neural networks that generate some kind of content, usually creative one. This could be text, it could be images. In our research, we wanted to dive into the topic of generative neural networks. I want to specifically emphasize that we did not ask about other neural networks. Actually, as I understand today, my colleagues will tell you a little about other types. I focus specifically on generative AI because it's a major trend today. This is what attracted public attention and interest specifically to the topic of artificial intelligence. For our first survey, we decided to understand in general how familiar people in Moscow are with generative AI. Our survey data showed that a quarter of the population is familiar with generative neural networks and have experience in using them. And for the most part, these are young people under 35. The most popular general network was, of course, ChatGPT. The visual neural network Midjourney took the second place. If we move specifically to the topic of healthcare, there is, of course, not such a wide coverage. We see that only 9% of this 26, in fact, only 2% of the population were looking for some kind of health information in neural networks. Mostly they searched in ChatGPT, but at the same time, I don't know if this is optimistic or not. Most of those who were looking for information in generative neural network on health issues consider these networks to be a trustworthy source of information. In general, we can say that today a third of Moscovites believe that generative neural networks will be able to replace a doctor in the future. Why so few? As I see it, and speaking from experience of previous studies, this is mainly due to older people who often do not understand modern technologies and associate quality with face-to-face appointments. They do not always accept digital technologies. There are also gender differences. Men tend to be more optimistic about generative neural networks. We believe that this is because men are statistically more likely than women to work in technical professions. On the other hand, we can say that this also has advantages. So far, ChatGPT treatment has not become competitive with Google or Yandex treatment, but we'll see how it goes. The second risk we see with generative neural networks is that they can reproduce stereotypes about healthcare. Our center is actively studying the issue of perception of medical professions, and we see that visual AI reproduce visual stereotypes about health workers. In particular, we have nurses, or broadly speaking, nursing specialists, among whom are male nurses, but the neural network still presents them as young women. One could say that the majority of nurses are women, everything is fine, but we see that, for example, a generated image of a doctor usually shows an elderly man, even though statistically in our country and in other countries of the world, female doctors outnumber men. But the stereotype, historical stereotype, is that a doctor is an elderly man. As for the text neural networks, they have their own stereotypes. If visual neural networks reproduce stereotypes about appearance, then textual reproduce stereotypes about functionality. If we go to the image of the nursing profession, despite the fact that today's trend is for nurses to become more autonomous specialists, the neural network often sees them as support staff. The issue of stereotyping is not a philosophical question. Many studies show that these negative stereotypes can have a serious impact on the healthcare system. And unfortunately, we can see that such a vicious cycle, that the neural network is trained on the data that contains stereotypes and biases, quite a lot of it not neutralized, then generates products with stereotypes and releases them into the open sources again. And for the next iteration of the network is trained on new, more stereotypical data. From what I see in the IT companies like an OpenAI, they try to break this cycle through cooperation with socio-humanistic specialists who assist neural networks. This is all I wanted to say specifically about generative neural networks. We present data on these studies in our publications. I won't stop any further on this subject. The next topic that I would like to cover quickly is gamification. It is often associated with digitalization because often by gamification in healthcare we mean some kind of digital applications and technologies. According to our research, 35% of Muscovites have heard something about gamification technologies in medicine, and 14% already have experience in using gaming technologies. These are mainly gamification technologies that involve people in a healthy lifestyle. This includes physical activity, proper nutrition, and adherence to a daily routine. All kinds of it. One of the gamification elements is a progress bar. You do more, you are rewarded by the fact that your progress bar grows, you get some stars. For example, you squat for 20 times and you get a new level in the app. These are fairly simple techniques that are widely used. At the same time, today there is no leading app in this area, unlike among neural networks. And what is especially interesting is that some Muscovites believe that even government resources like mos.ru and YEMIAS also have gamification techniques. This is why in the forum we have a separate section dedicated to gamification. There will be many interesting cases there. I won't stop any further on this either. The next topic relates to digital metaverses. Now, this topic has become less popular since there is a slight decline in the global economy. But I see that in the future it will again gain prominence. Our survey showed that 55% of Muscovites have heard something about digital universes, and despite the fact that this technology is less public, its credibility from a healthcare perspective is about the same as neural networks. Approximately half of Moscow residents are potentially ready to receive medical services in digital meta-universes, including telemedicine. Again, as with other digital technologies, younger people are more positive about these metaverses. And today, we will also hear interesting cases in this area. I want to say that nowadays everything digital is trendy and promising. We are all amazed by these digital technologies. Finally, I'd like to briefly mention the opposing group of themes. Because in addition to such a serious digital block, our forum will feature several blogs regarding the human, the intimate, and the personal, and how to use internal resources in our turbulent times. It is no coincidence that, along with digitalization, mental health and psychology are popular topics today. With our state actively supporting them. At the intersection of such non-digital art turning to classical art, we brought up the completely different subject of art as medicine in our query. We asked Muscovites what works of art give them strength and improve their emotional state when they feel bad. To be honest, instead of some sort of social position, we expected some type of value split. However, what we see here is a fairly strong sense of unity in values. Basically, a cultural code that binds the populace together. That is, most often people improve their emotional state mostly through Russian art. This is reading works from the classical golden age of Russian literature and Soviet period, listening to prominent composers, particularly Pyotr Tchaikovsky, or watching masterpieces of Soviet cinema. The most popular book across all authors was Bulgakov's novel Master and Margarita. In general, tying this to the topic of our plenary session, it seems to me that the recipe for anti-fragility, which will allow the healthcare system not only to roll back, but also to move forward, is precisely the combination of such opposites within the framework of an interdisciplinary synthesis. When we identify a fundamental value that unites these opposites, we can use that to create a synthesis that is far more powerful than the sum of these opposites. For the past 5 years, at least, in this field of health and social sciences and humanities, our forum has provided a venue for this kind of synthesis. And I'm sure that this year the ideas of our wonderful experts will also contribute to the creation of new anti-fragile healthcare system. Thank you. Thank you, Ignat. Indeed, our Center for Medical and Sociological Research operates on a closed cycle of research where the findings are integrated into our activities. For example, we investigated several marketing methods and their most effective use, and the outcome was the citywide marathon 100 Days of Health, which we have successfully ran for Muscovites for the past 2 years. It is incredibly popular because we implemented all the technologies, gamification and artificial intelligence, so a person can feel comfortable when interacting with a doctor and with experts in the healthcare system. But in general, Moscow is a leader both in patient focus and in matters of digitalization. The healthcare system in Moscow is almost entirely digitized and paperless. This is another term that our leaders have introduced this year. And one of the tools of such a platform for human interaction with the healthcare system is EMIAS. Dmitry Mugenov, our next speaker, had a project called EMIAS Info in the Moscow healthcare system. And this project also actively uses gamification technologies, artificial intelligence, and other digital solutions in order to become convenient and useful for Muscovites. Dmitry, you have the floor.
Дмитрий, вам слово.
Hello, dear colleagues. Many thanks to the organizers for such a wonderful forum and for the opportunity to speak at it. I have been involved in implementing something in our beloved city of Moscow for over 20 years. Once I started by introducing legal reference systems for municipal judges in Moscow. When they first appeared, there were 384 courts, and then I faced the fact that these 384 courts were completely different teams, where some new digital technology needed to be introduced. By the way, computers were not commonplace yet. It was in 2004, and the primary goal was to set up these computers and train people to use them. The human factor played a crucial role. How people lived without computers, how they used legal literature, how they conducted judicial processes and sessions, how they prepared for all of this. And it turned out to be extremely important in such a complex environment as judges, who are fairly authoritative and strong individuals who must be confident in themselves. Introducing something new, innovative to them, turned out to be quite a challenge. And I'll tell you a secret that it was probably at that time that the implementation of the EMIA system was born, which then began in 2012. Because when digitalization of healthcare began in 2011 throughout Russia and in Moscow, the question arose of how to implement these digital technologies in all these thousands of institutions with tens of thousands of people, considering the average age of the doctors. Of course, without everything that is being discussed today and is the topic of the forum, it would have been impossible if, in 2012, the mayor hadn't supported the idea that we should turn to face patients and doctors. We need to understand how they live, what they breathe, what their values are, problems, what are their pains. And with these new technologies, and we weren't just setting up computers, clearing paper off desks. At that time, we were also pulling cables during repairs. It was a huge stress. And without taking into account human nature, sociology, I'm honestly not a professional in this field at all. I don't know, I don't have the relevant education, so I may confuse some terms, excuse me. We started by simply saying, let's just understand what people want. We didn't have the technologies or research back then. We just tried to understand people in a humane way. And we hired 1,000 implementers, regular people, our colleagues, friends, sister brothers. We just hired people from a neighborhood who helped, stood by these information kiosks, and helped the elderly women figure them out. And they went to the doctors and helped train them. And we specifically hired Vladimir Shahidjanyan with his touch typing training software. Professionals created a technology for our doctors' special training. It's all sociology. So, without a human attitude to people, we wouldn't have any digitalization. And here is our new iteration in the 2020s. And we are implementing artificial intelligence. We have built the infrastructure over the past 10 years. And we are starting to move towards the quality of medical care. We are already at a different level of understanding and perception. And here's my team of young, active guys. Not so long they worked in business. They told me there is such thing as a product approach. Everyone uses it. Yandex, Sberbank, Tinkoff, Alfa-Bank, Apple use it. So what is it? It's the kind of approach that allows them to create products that we all enjoy. All these Apple products, all our wonderful banking applications. A Russian fintech, we know that our banking applications are some of the best in the world. Gosuslugi, they already use it, and Mos.ru uses it. So what is it? And is this approach applicable in creating state digital products? The product approach, the team told me, always involves metrics and counters in everything. And we always count, like when we implement something, how many people went there and so on. So we're always starting with creating some beautiful project or product. We want to create cool products, implement cool projects. The guys say that for this, you need a structure of metrics. It is necessary to focus on the user. They also say that you need to constantly generate some hypotheses, test them with experiments. Then, there should always be someone monitoring this specific product that we created, some service. Like, for example, a doctor has some computer vision service that allows them to analyze images. There should always be a person who day and night monitors these metrics, puts forth hypotheses on how to make the doctor use the service more often, stay there longer, get answers faster, and all of this is in numbers. There should be a person who is constantly thinking about this, a kind of product owner. There should be a flexible development system when we receive all this feedback, so we can quickly implement it all into products. When I started working on large projects of federal scale, we had GOST 34, federal standard. According to GOST 34, we were developing large information system. And you design for a year, 2 years, you design the system, there is nothing to show for it. By the time you have written all these volumes of documents, the world has already changed. Your system is no longer needed by anyone. Such development methods are not suitable. That's why new, very fast, cyclic development methods come into play. There are complex words written about it, so on. So you have to quickly implement innovations in life that you have discovered, that people need. And of course, teams should be interdisciplinary. They should include sociologists, developers, programmers, and those who understand how it all works in the city, and doctors and scientists. And this team should work as one team. Here is a brief overview. Just take a screenshot. I won't go into details here. Usually, as I said, we used to do projects. A project is when you start something, you are given a technical assignment, it is approved, and after some time you finish it. There you have a project. And then what? Therefore, the product approach comes to replace or assist the project approach. It's a continuous improvement of the product you created. And as we discussed, based on metrics and so on. They do not contradict each other. In essence, a project can be a project to create a product. Essentially, the product approach is an infinite number of small projects. This is what it looks like in a cycle. The product approach, as we are trying to implement it now. If you look, there are blue squares. 4, 5, 6, and 8. This is how the project approach goes. This is how software is usually developed. Often, we as programmers used to create a product. We like it, and it matches the technical assignment. Great. Only doctors can't use it, and patients can't use it. I was involved in the implementation of EMIAS in the polyclinics of Moscow, and we set up these wonderful information kiosks in all polyclinics. And I was responsible for the implementers. I had 1,200 people in the polyclinics. They stood there implementing. And one of my implementers simply had his tooth knocked out with a bag, because it was impossible to make an appointment through this information kiosk. The interface was developed by programmers, as they thought it was cool, according to the technical assignment. Everything was fine. Only an elderly woman couldn't understand it all. And then we activated sociology, as to say, the product approach and so on. We figured it out. We tried to understand what people need. We conducted research. A huge number of people were studied, how they live, how they make appointments, how they used to do it on paper, what they have in their mind. And based on this, we all refined these interfaces together. And interfaces appeared in the kiosks where a person would come once, twice, 3 times and make an appointment. The EMIAS info was created the same way. The task was for a person to go to the website and make an appointment in 5 minutes. This is a very simple concept, to go in and make an appointment in 5 minutes. Behind it is a huge team, huge work, research, coordination with all government services and so on. It keeps changing and it's an ongoing process. To maintain this 5-minute appointment metric, this cycle needs to be constantly run at a tremendous speed. I also suggest taking a screenshot and looking at it. The blue squares represent the usual IT development process, and the green squares represent what we are talking about now. We added sociology, research, and so on. Nowadays, special product teams are employed by these modern companies such as Tinkoff, Yandex, Sberbank. They have various technologies. The product approach is invaluable. The beautiful trees, see, of course, some generative AI do it. I don't know, maybe they use Kandinsky or Midjourney. I don't know what my team used. And of course, I can't read all these books anymore. I'm already too old for the full reading. I trust my team. Well, maybe I'll read something. I think I've read Scrum. This is what my colleagues recommend to read for those who want to start implementing the product approach. Now, the answer to the question of whether we can apply the product approach in the digitization of healthcare and in general in development of our state and the city. No, we cannot apply it directly. We are not a commercial company. We cannot constantly try to satisfy the user, increase costs, as businessmen call them, increase in expenses, because for businessmen, after increasing costs, there is profit. By increasing the number of people, expenses, services, some features, which are called new functions or goodies, they profit from it, and that's why they grow. In Moscow, we have nowhere to grow. We don't want the Department of Health or Information Technology to endlessly expand. Nobody will allow us to do that, and we don't need it. We have a more sophisticated, interesting, advanced task at hand. My team constantly says we want a product approach. I tell them, guys, our task is much more interesting than Tinkoff or Sberbank. We should do something even cooler than them, but much smarter, finer, without generating such expenses, so to speak. We should constantly reduce costs while enhancing quality. We should make these processes that we have shown you here smarter and smarter, finer and finer all the time. And that research that, for example, Ignat presented earlier, is absolutely necessary for us, because by looking at what scientists have found, we can aim much more precisely and do exactly what is needed, when it is needed, and how it is needed. And we won't waste extra money or people. So this is work if we skillfully integrate good science into those green squares, will yield very good practical results. In this case, the product approach, sociology, is very necessary to help leaders form the right vision and the right direction. That's point one. And the second point, it should help later, when the project is implemented, when we have promoted it, to start this cycle of continuous improvement. Constantly listen to people and gradually improve, to listen to feedback and improve. Properly setting priorities and investing in what will bring the maximum results to both the city and residents who have not yet to become patients, to patients proper, and to healthcare providers. And of course, science or technology methodologies are of great help in this. And one very, very important thing, all these methodologies, approaches and so on are only good when you have truly sincere goals, when you set goals sincerely. Because from the stage with microphones you can say one thing, but in project you do something slightly different. Therefore, we need to find leaders who are already ahead in power, who can influence the realities of other leaders and help them move towards these true goals. When these goals are not just about earning money and so on. We're currently in a different environment. This is healthcare, this is public administration. We must have state thinking. Our goals must be sincere. This does not eliminate all the peculiarities of working in power and our complex industries, but always compare yourself. When what I say, think and do, is it the same or not? If it's similar, in line with each other, then all these technologies, they are for the better, they will work. People will trust you, your employees, your leaders, doctors, and patients. They will then trust you. So another word after the phrase take responsibility is trust. And all of these things together, they start working. And that's how these wonderful products are created, which then the Moscow Healthcare Department and Department of IT Technology and social media blogs can produce. These are the things that the whole world actually looks at with such big eyes and desire, because in many things we are number one in the world. Sometimes out of sheer luck, but precisely because we are sincere in our beliefs that about where we're going. And we first act, and then when it starts to work out and we have enough time, we start implementing the coolest technologies in our activities. Thank you. Thank you, Dmitry, for your very inspiring message. I think we're lucky with the leaders in Moscow. Very true. They allow us to improve ourselves and always guide us towards finding the most optimal paths and moving towards the realization of the goals of the Moscovites. And of course, even if it's challenging for us to grow in scale, because Moscow is already a huge metropolis, the motivation to grow qualitatively is always there for us. Ignat set the trend by talking about the recipe for anti-fragility, so I will ask you again, what is the main, probably one important recipe for interdisciplinary anti-fragility for the Moscow healthcare system? The cycle that I have drawn, the cyclical process, is the anti-fragility itself. As far as I understand, anti-fragility is when something complex and scary happens, like a crisis, and we become stronger. Therefore, in order to become stronger after a crisis and to use the crisis as an opportunity, like we did with the COVID pandemic, we clearly became stronger after COVID pandemic, constantly improving, constantly being in the process of improvement.
Действовать по хорошей, классной технологии в цикле постоянно, непрерывно улучшая, постоянно.
So we continue this process, and this is anti-fragility. Then any crisis we encounter, we'll look at it, calmly and rationally assess it with the help of scientists, research, and find areas for growth. And this is how we will get better. This is, in my opinion, how anti-fragility works. Thank you, colleagues. You can ask questions in our social networks. I would like to remind you that once again there is broadcast being conducted on the event website, on the TASS website and Vkontakte. And we have simultaneous translation, which we will need in a few minutes when we have a professor from Brazil will be speaking. The question, I will address it to Agnat. People are asking is how extensive the sociological research we conduct in the city is. Thank you for the question. Here, perhaps some specifics are needed. The scale can be measured in various categories. We can measure scale by the coverage of different groups, by sample sizes, by the coverage of topics. But overall, the short answer is that we and our colleagues conduct truly large-scale research. That is, we cover the main target groups, we cover the main relevant topics for the healthcare system, and we survey a sufficiently large number of people. Thank you. The use of digital technologies in sociology allows us to conduct sociological research almost constantly. If before it was a cycle, first it was necessary to determine a representative sample, build the methodology, design, and then conduct research, now it is a constant process in many projects. Therefore, target groups change, methodologies change, but sociological research is conducted practically 24/7. In Moscow, various groups, including our Center for Medical Sociology Research, are already at such a science-based level of data. And I would like to ask our esteemed speaker from Brazil, professor of the University of Campinas, Professor Barras, to join us now. He is with us despite the very early morning for him. Professor Barras is actively involved in sociological research, and we are very interested in how our approaches to defining the anti-fragility of the healthcare system intersect with the role of sociological research in this process. Please, Professor Barras, you have the floor.
Good morning to all. Thank you so much for having me. And I would like to thank especially Dr. Ignat Bogdan and Dr. Maria Miaksheva. It's a great pleasure being here with you. And I will share my presentation. I will talk about the special issue in our Brazilian society at the moment, especially at the university where I teach. I'm a sociologist and I teach in a medical school. And they say it is the second best university in Latin America, one of the best medical schools, and I will share my presentation. I'll talk about health, disease, and healthcare from the perspective of indigenous students enrolled in the undergraduate courses at the University of Campinas, where I teach. I'll focus especially in this perspective of challenges of vulnerable population. The presence of indigenous students in the university is a very recent event in the Brazilian academic culture. As you know, Brazil was colonized by Portuguese people in the century 16th, and there was indigenous people here since they arrived, but only the last 20 years, the indigenous people have a special entrance to the main universities in Brazil. Since the first edition of the indigenous entrance exam at the State University of Campinas, where I teach, this special entrance started in 2018, and since then, students start coming, and at the moment we have 348 students, indigenous students from 49 different ethnicities, and biggest part of them have their own languages, and of course cultures and costumes. And since they arrived, many intercultural boundaries have been produced, in which models of thinking, experiencing, meaning, and resignifying, among other aspects, health, illness, and care are confronted. That means the presence of them have been producing a lot of new intercultural boundaries. This project was funded by São Paulo Research Foundation, and it was developed with a co-labor methodology. That means we developed a set of strategies based on interculturality, interepistemicity, and decoloniality. We developed the project with indigenous students from 10 different ethnicities, and they took part since the beginning of the project. And the idea was to construct narratives between the researchers and the indigenous students, not about them, but with them. The diaspora of indigenous students are a very complex process that translates into experience of immersion in a new physical climate and new social, cultural, and political climate. We use this climate word, especially, of course, we could use a lot of other different words or concepts, but we are telling about climate exactly because indigenous students are coming, mostly of them, came from this area in red, in Amazon, in Brazilian Amazon, and they moved to this blue, one of these blue areas, where is São Paulo State, and where is our university. It means more than 3,000 kilometers distant. And the climate in Amazon is very different from the climate. I'm talking about weather especially. But of course, inside the university, the social, political, economical climate is quite completely different to them also. So because that, we are using this word climate. This experience involve multiple dimensions that affect health of them. There is a special health system to indigenous people in Brazil. But since they moved to live at the university, this special health system is not working here to them. So they can receive treatments or healthcare of the national healthcare for every Brazilian people. And some necessities of them are not respected and are not possible to find here in our city. So it is a kind of racism with different degrees of intensity and different forms that permeates these experiences, which vary in each case. And we can found issues of racism related to social, cultural, and political climate in the place of origin. That means they brought with them different issues related to social relationship, the cultural issues and political relationship there also. And we can find some racism also related to intersection of social markers of difference, such gender, age, and phenotypic characteristics. Of course, they are different. They have their own characteristics. And people here in the south of Brazil can look to them, and sometimes they produce a kind of racism based on gender, age, and phenotypic characteristics. And also, we can find difference between academic environments. They came from different perspectives, different schools, and there are a lot of strange meetings when they are here developing their studies. To the same extent that racism is perceived and evaluated by indigenous students as one of the main pathogenic factors in the university diaspora space, at the same, they told us about the racism and different forms of racism, but at the same extent, they show us the construction of indigenous identity perceived as a general research of resistance and health production. That means when they come here, of course, they know about the difficulties and the resistance to be indigenous people in Brazilian society. But since they arrive here, they start developing this strong indigenous identity related to social movements. And the social issues relate to the possibility to development of their communities, and special policies relate to indigenous people in Brazil. So they suffer racism, but when they are here, they start being more related. They took part in a strongly perspective in the social movements related to indigenous communities in Brazil. Going to the conclusion, we conclude that the reinstitution of the conditions and possibilities for the production of healthy subjectivities and collectivities at the university depends on the pluri-ethnic and pluri-epistemic refounding of the academic space, which must be carried out with and not for indigenous students. They point a lot of issues that produce health problems to them or health suffering. Sometimes the food is completely different because they live near to big rivers in Amazon. They eat a lot of fishes. And here in this area, we do not have big rivers, and it's not part of our cultural nutrition, having fish so much as they have. They suffer a lot in the winter times here because it's much colder than there. They point the necessity to forest to balance their own healthy, and we have no forest near here. So all these they pointed is a necessity to create new perspectives. And when they brought this to us inside the university, of course, they put us on challenge to recreate our own space in the university. And it is very important we are challenged to create not to them, but with them, because they are bringing new necessities to us. And of course, the Brazilian indigenous people has been part of the established outsider conflicts in Brazilian society, and consequently, the remarkable controversy between performances of coloniality and performances of decolonization, right? They have been fighting for their own lands. They have secret lands. They need the forest to live. And biggest part of Brazilian society are fighting against them because they want the land to produce agriculture or cows and things like that. So it has been 500 years of resistance and controversy about established outsider populations in Brazilian society. And to conclude, it is necessary more than interdisciplinarity to make healthcare system anti-fragile. That means we have in Brazil the unique system or universal system, health system for all Brazilian people. That means more than 200 million people have free access to health care. Of course, there are a lot of challenges, but this system has been working the last 35 years. And also, we have a special subsystem for indigenous people. But work with this idea of interdisciplinarity is not sufficient when we have been listening the indigenous people, because interdisciplinarity, if you think about this concept, it is the meeting of disciplinarities, and it can encompass multi-dimensional care. That means you have disciplinarity about biological issues, about social issues, about psychological issues, about spiritual issues, but you can try to put these together. But what the indigenous students have telling us is their necessities are not only in these disciplines. What they need is more than interdisciplinarity. They need epistemic justice to make healthcare system anti-fragile to them or to all. That means they have not professionals inside the health system or in our city or in our university. There is no professionals formed and working with their indigenous practices indigenous symbols about health, disease, and healthcare. So when they have no epistemic or knowledge or skills related to this meanings in their cultures, they feel, okay, we have a kind of health assistance, but this health assistance is not enough because we need our perspectives in religious healthcare, psychological healthcare, and sometimes biological healthcare that is different from biomedical or the medicine or conventional medicine they can receive here at the university in other areas in Brazil. So to finalize, to make healthcare anti-fragile for all people in Brazil, in around the world, of course, for vulnerable people, we need more than different disciplines. We need also their own perspectives and their own professionals, their own beliefs. So that's it. Thank you so much for the possibility, and it's been a big pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson, for your excellent presentation, for sharing your experience. We have indeed many similar tasks for healthcare systems in working with various target groups. One of the key questions for the fragility of the healthcare system is the involvement of various organizations in developing the healthcare system. Not only government ones, but also private ones and non-profit organizations. Our next speaker is a representative of the non-profit organization Lifeline Foundation. Please welcome Yulia Goncharova, Director of Public Relations. The foundation makes a significant contribution to working with complex target groups. It is very important that we understand the common tasks and we can integrate the activities and initiatives of such foundations into the part of healthcare system where it is especially necessary to spend time talking to people, ensuring close contact, long-term and close interaction in solving complex, sometimes health-related issues, especially when it comes to children's health. Yulia, please tell us what innovative technologies you are currently using to solve your tasks and, of course, to develop the healthcare system in Russia, to save lives, children, and preserve their health. Please. Hello, dear colleagues. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to participate in this forum, because our Lifeline Foundation currently has a truly unique experience in which we call cyber fundraising. I'm happy to share this technology that we use, and most importantly, I will talk about the social impact we're getting from working with digital technologies now. Lifeline Foundation is one of the oldest foundations in our country. Next year, we will be celebrating our 20th anniversary. Over all these years, we have provided targeted health to more than 13,000 children, and additionally, over 50,000 children have received our high-tech treatment, which we call space equipment, that the foundation purchases for Russian clinics. These children come from all regions of Russia. Our strategy is to support high technologies in medicine, technologies that are not yet included in the state funding program. How does it work? Essentially, the foundation takes on a new direction that is not yet included in the state quota system and develops this direction for several years. Once a sustainable effect is achieved, this program is usually transferred and scaled up by the state, bringing this direction into the quota system. And we provide targeted assistance only in cases when, for example, at the beginning or at the end of the year, quotas are either used up or not open yet, and clinics turn to us for targeted help. This was the case with apheresis and proton therapy, which are the latest treatment methods in pediatric oncology. Currently, we are supporting a completely new and advanced method that can be considered the future of medicine, CAR T-cell therapy in pediatric oncology. In short, I'm not a medical specialist and do not have a deeper knowledge of medical terminology, but this is a method geared towards the medicine of the future, where a child's immune cells are essentially trained to find and fight tumor cells. We are expecting the first child to undergo this therapy very soon, and we will soon begin supporting this program. But what I want to say is that our foundation is private, a fundraising medical foundation, and of course, to develop high technologies in medicine, to support these technologies, we work with large companies, we cooperate with big business. Quite often, we have to prove the social effects of our foundation's activities. And this, as it may not sound very straightforward right now, is of course important, that we are saving children's lives, fighting for the health of our children. However, in terms of significance for big business, it is still important to show how it works on a state level, at the state level. So we also conducted a study. Thank you very much, by the way, Ignat, for your presentation. You showed the numbers that are very important to us. We also rely on figures. On the screen, by the way, you see a QR code. Here you can get more detailed information about the study, about the authors, about our sample, to understand that this is indeed a serious work. And also through this QR code, more detailed results can be found. I will briefly stop at a few points of the study to emphasize their importance. Firstly, the changes that occurred in the family after the participation of our ward's children in the medical program. Participation of children in the program provided parents and guardians with the opportunity to, firstly, change jobs, improve their financial situation, and increase work intensity. In essence, the proportion of full-time workers among adults increased from 41% to 53%. This is indeed a very good result in terms of parents' socializations. As we all understand well that having a sick child is difficult, parents are forced to take some time off to take care of for the child. And after the child completes treatment, parents return to work, and accordingly, this partly affects the state as people return to employment. The emotional state of the children naturally improved after undergoing treatment, and 79% of children who participated in our program noted that their condition had improved. And this is really what we work for. It is a great joy. These are very good numbers. Happy children and their parents. This is why organizations like ours exist. One of the truly important tasks that we set for ourselves is the socialization of the children themselves. Our children, our words, participate in various school programs, developmental programs, attend school, preschool institutions, and different extracurricular activities. And one thing I would like to emphasize is the very high percentage of children who use the internet, including for learning, and of course there is a gaming aspect as well, but for many of them this is really their only connection to the outside world, because at certain stages of treatment, many children, especially those with oncological diagnosis, are required to spend a long time in medical institutions in sterile conditions. Well, this study and our research have shown a trend that the average age of benefactors in Russia is getting younger. It's really important for us to attract young people to our work. And in order to attract these young people, we really need to speak the same language with the younger audience, communicate with them in the environment where they are used to communicating. This brings us to our main point. All communications are gradually moving online for us. We are getting used to having WhatsApp, Telegram, messengers in our lives, and we do not even notice how digitalization is entering our lives and taking up more and more of our time. The same is happening to fundraising, where digitalization and digitization are becoming more prevalent, and we're forced to adapt to this situation, and not just adapt, but also move forward, because we really need to attract young people to charitable activities through understandable and accessible tools and clear communication. Therefore, in our work, the meta-universe has appeared, and we have essentially become the first non-profit in Russia, and perhaps even in world history, to open a digital office in the metaverse. What is it and how did it happen? Well, a year and a half ago, even in our foundation, we didn't know about the existence of the metaverse or how to work with it, but a live interest in everything new and in digitization led us to study this issue, and we participated in a PR battle where young people, students from various faculties and universities in Russia, proposed solutions for our case on how to work with a young audience. And one of the solutions turned out to be the idea of opening the first digital office in the metaverse. What's important? The foundation uses 100% of the funds raised for the medical programs on implementing these programs, treating children, and purchasing equipment. Fortunately, all administrative expenses of the foundation are covered by our partner. Therefore, it is important for us that our work and activities are successful in some way. This is related to our work with partners. And this decision, communication and collaboration with students, along with this PR battle, have given us the opportunity to implement this digital space, make this digital office successful. And this is important because we all know that there are various metaverses. Businesses are probably more acquainted with Decentraland, where buying a few pixels to build your virtual office costs millions of rubles if we convert the price. And many companies, including Russian ones, have virtual offices there alongside us. Perhaps many parents are familiar with Roblox metaverse, where children spend a lot of time. It's a gaming metaverse. We, on the other hand, took a different path. We opened a digital office in the special metaverse. The importance for us is that the registration in this metaverse is free. Everyone can enter, including Russian users, They can wander through digital worlds, visit us, and again, on the screen you can both see the code through which you can come to us. Registration there is extremely simple. You can sign up with the email. You can create your avatar and stroll around. The digital world is very easy, literally in a few clicks. And each of us have very own avatar, and you can meet us there, including our foundation president, Faina Zakharova. And of course, by creating such a digital office, on the one hand, yes, I won't hide it, we aimed to come closer to modern digital technologies, master them, be the first in this area. But also, for the most part, the most important thing is the implementation of our medical programs. So it was crucial to understand how we can efficiently convert our presence in the metaverse to fundraising. And we found such a tool. Thanks to our partners, once again, we held the first charitable stream marathon in our metaverse. It was a quite large-scale event that we launched together with the developers of our digital office in the metaverse. The agency HD Artel, which is a mix of a student collective and an agency, and together with our business partner X5 Group, who helped us to implement this project. Surprisingly, quite popular bloggers, gamers, streamers joined us, and they organized charitable streams. They asked all the users, participants of these streams, to donate first to their account, to the account of the streamer, and then they used the means to transfer these donations to the foundation itself, since we naturally only work under a donation agreement and currently accept digital currency donations. So these donations were brought over to our foundation, and our partner multiplied them by 5. The numbers on the screen in front of you, 10 million rubles. This is what was raised thanks to such large-scale campaign. This is a really good result that we're proud of and believe that this is a practical application of technology, which is essentially a collaboration of streamers and gamers with non-profits, with this digitization, as we say. And the most important thing I would like to emphasize is, undoubtedly, the social effect that we can already call a breakthrough. The point is that our children, as I mentioned, are mainly young oncology patients who, at a certain stage of their lives, while undergoing treatment, are forced to be in sterile conditions. The online events that we conduct, large-scale charities, social events that we organize, including sport events, where people participate to help the young beneficiaries of the foundation. Unfortunately, the children themselves cannot participate in these events. Nevertheless, it is very important for many donors, including the younger audience we are talking about, to have contact with those whom they are helping through. So, as not to lose this contact, it is important for them to have communication, which we cannot provide at the moment where the children are undergoing treatment. Therefore, this metaverse allows our charges to meet with their benefactors. This meeting took place during this charity marathon. Our children, creating their avatars, with our help, met their donors. It was incredibly touching and truly very important, because in this way, we can continue to work so that donors can meet the children in the future. Lastly, I would like to invite everyone to the Russia exhibition, which is currently taking place at VDNH from December 5th to December 7th. We are presented in the House of Youth, where our charity foundation booth is located, and there you can take a virtual tour of our metaverse and see how it works for yourself. And of course, I invite everyone to come to our website using our QR code on the screen and help the children, because helping is the right thing to do. Thank you, Yulia. You are so creative. I did not expect that. We're also moving towards metaverses, and we have already developed a conceptual solution for patients with diabetes. And I hope we can become not the first, but at least the second in this direction. What is your recipe for the anti-fragility of the healthcare system? You know, I think it is really important to emphasize such synergy of interaction between the public and private sectors, and the work format that exists in our foundation emphasizes the efficiency and truly sustainable nature of this interaction. Thank you. Moving on to the next speaker, I would like to once again draw your attention to the fact that simultaneous translation is available via the link provided in the TAS announcement posted on their website. Our next speaker is a representative from Serbia, so I'm reminded that you will be able to hear the translation. And I would like to invite Vesna Trifunovic to our studio. She collaborated with WHO. As you know, WHO actively promotes ideas related to healthcare system resilience, finding ways to resist crises that have occurred in the past. And the pandemic period has shown us the need for developing government systemic solutions related to the management and anti-fragility of the healthcare system. Please, Vesna, you have the floor.
Hello, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak in this forum. I appreciate the opportunity to take part in a discussion about interdisciplinarity, which is a very important trend in the production of knowledge. The integration of knowledge and ways of thinking of different disciplines certainly leads to more comprehensive understanding of a particular problem or an intellectual issue that could not be possible by exclusively relying on one discipline. So there's a lot of potential in interdisciplinary integration, but there are also certain problems in that regard, and some of which reveal this hierarchy of disciplines in interdisciplinary interaction. Such problems are especially noticeable when it comes to cooperation between social and natural sciences. So in this presentation, I would like to talk first a little bit about the challenges that medical anthropology faces in collaboration with biomedicine and public health. And then I will move on to giving the example of how the lack of anthropological perspective contributed to an partly unsuccessful official response to anti-vaccination campaigns in Serbia when they first appeared in the country some 10 years ago. So the second part would pinpoint the significance of sociocultural and political insights beside medical knowledge for promoting vaccination and fighting off anti-vaccination influences. Let me start first by defining medical anthropology. I'm sure everybody knows what medical anthropology is, but let's just remind ourselves that this is a discipline which describes, interprets, and critically appraises the relationship between culture, behavior, health, and disease, and places health and illness in the broader context of cultural, social, political, economic, and historical processes. Medical anthropology started off as an applied discipline in the international public health movement during the previous century, when it became quite clear that many health problems were socially and culturally determined. So anthropologists were supposed to inform health professionals about how traditional beliefs and practices in different societies conflicted with biomedical approach, how social and cultural factors influenced health and health-seeking behavior. And anthropologists were also supposed to provide insights into why some official health programs were not that successful in certain contexts. So anthropologists have been working with health professionals to solve problems that have mainly been defined by health professionals. In that regard, there is this dominant position of biomedicine, the authority of biomedical clinical culture, and hence the unequal position of doctors and anthropologists in medical research settings. In such settings, the doctors are those who define the problems and research priorities. And anthropologists just tend to play some kind of a side role. This is mostly because health professionals view anthropology in methodological terms, as a set of procedures. So, for instance, qualitative methods, in-depth interviews, focus group discussions. So, procedures for collecting hidden or sensitive data, for discovering cultural barriers to change. The role of anthropologists is seen as giving advice on how to influence and change problematic beliefs, attitudes, and behavior through culturally appropriate interventions. Methodological differences between social and natural sciences could also be one of the obstacles in their cooperation and integration. And this was especially revealed in my own research when I talked to my colleagues, so other anthropologists, about their experiences in interdisciplinary collaboration with medical experts in Serbia. So what they shared with me was the impression that medical experts did not understand the value of qualitative methods, that they did not show any particular interest in those methods, nor in anthropological insights or knowledge. And they would only stick to quantitative methodology and statistics. And one of my colleagues said that his impression was that anthropology was strange and unknown to medical experts who he worked with, and that they probably thought that anthropology had nothing essential to contribute to the project. What was also interesting, the work of this colleague on the project was officially defined as qualitative researcher interviewer, instead of using much simpler or elegant terms like just anthropologist or ethnographer. So this suggests a kind of uncertainty in connecting a social science like anthropology with questions that are typically seen as the field of medicine and public health in local Serbian context. So in this context, anthropology is still not fully recognized as a discipline which could give valuable insights for different public health approaches. So let's see how this played out on the example of vaccination issues in Serbia. What I want to stress first as very important is this context, particular context, which means that the country went through a very complex process of post-socialist transformation, which significantly changed cultural and socio-political circumstances. So we have to bear this in mind. Before the first concerns about vaccines were raised, the public in Serbia had very little knowledge about vaccines and vaccination. And this was mainly because of the prevailing passive acceptance of vaccination programs, which was inherited from the previous socialist period. The country's leading public health experts recognized this, so they applied certain strategies to deal with this problem. They engaged first in disseminating accurate information about vaccines, vaccination practices, and their benefits. Then their approach was to demonstrate the need for vaccines in the contemporary period, their safety, their utility. And to do this, they relied on statistics, historical facts, and medical references. But as many studies showed, the link between education and behavioral change is really not that simple. So exposure to right information doesn't necessarily contribute to rising vaccination rates. In other words, educating the public was important, but not fundamental to solving this problem. So when their efforts didn't bring the desired results, the officials also turned to some unpopular measures, such as compulsion or legal sanctions. This was partly based on medical experts' reasoning why people challenge vaccination and vaccines. So according to their public statements, we could see that they saw those people as ignorant, as passive, irrational, emotional, gullible, suspicious, superstitious, susceptible to rumors, to conspiracy theories, even insufficiently civilized. And since these assumptions were actually quite insulting, they only provoked public backlash and only widened the gap between health officials and the public. So this was the point when anthropological insights were needed to reveal actual public views and causes of public concerns. So an independent anthropological research revealed that most people were actually not against vaccination. A closer analysis showed that their hesitancy, vaccine hesitancy, could be traced to far-reaching social problems and people's general experience of living in post-socialist circumstances. So, for instance, experts' arguments about the importance of herd immunity meant practically nothing to the public. And let me just remind you what herd immunity is. It means that wide vaccination coverage also provides protection for those who, for some reason, have not developed immunity. So this argument, as you can see, appeals directly to the values of collective solidarity. And precisely these values were not promoted social values in the new post-socialist context. This context was dominated by the message from the new political elite that from now on everybody should look out for themselves. So to keep insisting on the values of solidarity and public good or interest was actually pointless. And for this reason, people usually ignored this otherwise very reasonable argument about herd immunity. Also, the principles of individualism were promoted in new social circumstances. So people also developed an individual perception of risk. They started viewing vaccination as putting their own child at risk for the benefit of others. People also raised some important questions about the state's role and responsibilities. For instance, the issue of accountability in case of adverse side effects, no matter how rarely those may occur. People feared that they would not have adequate support because of inefficient justice system, social care, healthcare services, or simply because of discrimination and social exclusion of the disabled. So vaccination concerns in post-socialist Serbia were based on all these publicly recognized social problems. So one of the most important oversights in addressing vaccine skepticism in Serbia was not taking into account the complex reasons why people would resist vaccination. Instead, everybody who expressed any kind of doubt was treated as being against vaccines and aligned with anti-vaccine groups. Another misconception was that people were making decisions about vaccination exclusively under the influence of anti-vaccine groups. So not taking into account wider social, cultural, and political insights resulted in many misconceptions, which then shaped the official strategies in dealing with falling vaccination rates. And that's why significant efforts were aimed at discrediting the proponents of anti-vaccine groups and other important influences which affected vaccine hesitancy were completely neglected. And it was not surprising that vaccine skepticism persisted even after some of the most vocal anti-vaccine proponents have been discredited and denied access to public media. So I hope this was brief enough and interesting enough for you, and that would be all for me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Vesna, thank you for your presentation. It is indeed very important when we talk about vaccination to understand the behavior patterns of the population that influence decision-making. Technologies and artificial intelligence often help us in this. I suggest continuing the topic of artificial intelligence in medicine, healthcare, and discussing it with our next speaker, our wonderful friend, Representative ЦОМ, Kirill Rodin. How does the population perceive the use of artificial intelligence in medicine to manage their health and adjust treatment programs? Ignat noted the position of Moskovitz on this issue in his presentation. Many are already willing to accept artificial intelligence as a doctor, but we as healthcare organizers know for sure that this will not be the case. We create tools for doctors so that they can manage patient records, recommend new solutions for patients, and patients can manage their health using artificial intelligence technologies. But in a way, we want to replace the doctor. What do your studies say? You conduct this poll throughout Russia. Yes, colleagues, thank you very much for the invitation. This is not the first time we participate here. The forum is becoming more and more interesting. This is the fifth time we're holding the forum and the fifth time you're here. So thank you very much for the invitation. Research shows that there are many people who are ready and those who are not quite ready yet. Therefore, there is indeed room for certain contradictions in the context of the anti-fragility that all speakers are talking about today. The emergence of artificial intelligence in all areas of life, especially in the most sensitive sphere of medicine, in the sphere of healthcare, it is truly a revolution. It is a technological revolution. It is a revolution in some aspects of social structure. Any revolution, as mentioned here, either kills us or makes us stronger. Sometimes a revolution makes us stronger and sometimes it kills us. And if we want our social system or social subsystem, the sphere of healthcare, not to break, or at least not to roll downhill in this direction, then it is very important for us to have feedback actually with our beneficiaries, and thus to design this implementation program so that it really does not provoke fear, negativity, denial in people. Currently, we're somewhere in the stage of denial, a little bit of anger. We're still in the process before full acceptance. In order for this acceptance process going through all the known stages, so for this process to take place, from my point of view, we need to act cautiously, not to scare people, and indeed make them reliable allies in advancing this story, so that people understand how it works, that it is transparent, and understand the benefits it can bring in the future. Let's look at what the spheres are. This is truly an all-Russian study of our fellow citizens aged 18 and older. This is a phone survey with a margin of error of around 2.5%. This is the first point. We were interested in the sphere of morality and ethics. In fact, this question is more about which sphere people find most sensitive when it comes to the implementation of artificial intelligence. Among the spheres presented, we clearly see that healthcare is at the forefront. Following that is the education, military affairs, public administration, while in the creative field people are less afraid of unfamiliar innovations. The theme of healthcare is indeed the most sensitive today in terms of introducing artificial intelligence. Moving on to the comfort and other aspects. Here we asked how you would feel if your doctor relied on artificial intelligence, for example, for diagnosing diseases and recommending treatment. Today, 40% say that they are somewhat comfortable, while 49% of our citizens say that they are either uncomfortable or completely uncomfortable. This corresponds to the conversation about one majority being ready, while unfortunately another majority is not yet prepared. The question that arises here is how we should prepare. Next, when asking the question about a scenario where a doctor uses artificial intelligence for diagnosis and treatment recommendations, but the AI makes a mistake leading to incorrect treatment, who do you think who is responsible for this error? Medical errors are a well-known topic. It's a very sensitive issue for the entire professional community, including the definition of error and so on. Today we see that in any case, including errors caused by the artificial intelligence, 3% of our fellow citizens believe that AI is to blame, yet ultimately the responsibility will still fall on the doctor with whom the patient interacts. Developers are present, but they are also somewhat in the background. 30% believe that everyone is equally responsible, and this is also a sensitive issue. As any errors by the AI, doctors will still be the one responsible and bearing the consequences, including impacting their reputation and good name. This aspect also needs to be understood because it involves the acceptance from the medical community. Earlier, we talked about how patients must accept artificial intelligence technologies. But the medical community itself must also understand the risk involved, especially during innovation, as well as with a significant number of risks. From this point of view, the acceptance of this technology by the medical community to make them allies on this path is also one of the most important tasks. Then, we were also interested in what people think about using artificial intelligence in healthcare for disease diagnosis and treatment recommendations, and how it will impact it. The first, to improve patient health, will not negatively affect patients' health. From my perspective, this is a clear position. Yes, indeed, 17% of the citizens say that they're cautious and apprehensive. Such cautious people are always present in all our service. However, what's important here is the figure of 40% who unequivocally say that today the implementation of artificial intelligence is beneficial for patients. So, step by step, we are approaching the conclusion that Russians do not doubt that artificial intelligence is a future challenge that must be addressed, that progress cannot be stopped, that artificial intelligence indeed brings good. But the concern and apprehension among people lie in how this path will unfold, because the implementation of artificial intelligence will likely occur not today or tomorrow, but rather in a certain medium to long term, and possibly even far-reaching perspective, as people want to live here and be healthy today, and this creates concern. Also, we were asked how the use of artificial intelligence will affect the direction towards certain problems in existing medicine, such as medical errors, physicians' bias, patient safety records, and difficulties in personal relationships between patients and doctors. Let's briefly see. In terms of medical errors, this is very interesting. Patients believe that the situation will improve with the use of additional AI in the future. This ties into the notion that people are generally in favor of progress. Also, regarding bias among physicians towards patients of different age groups, opinions are split here on whether the situation will improve or worsen. Additionally, with regards to the safety of patients' medical records and what we commonly refer to as medical confidentiality or doctor-patient confidentiality, Here we have concerns, and the opinions are divided. A third believe it will improve, a third believe it will remain the same, and 20% fear that the situation may worsen. This is yet another sensitive area dealing with the fears people have as we move towards implementation. So, if we are aiming for this implementation, it is essential to explain and create a solid evidence base that the patient's medical history will indeed be adequately protected, perhaps even to a greater extent than what we can ensure today. Nonetheless, this information needs to be diligently carried out. Next, concerns were raised about difficulties in personal relationship between patients and doctors. Will a robot get in the way of this communication? Opinions were divided here as well, with a third believing the situation will improve, nearly 40% believe it will remain the same, and 20% believing it will worsen. These are areas of concern and apprehension as well. In conclusion, people are in favor of implementing artificial intelligence in medicine, understanding that it is the future and brings about benefits and improved quality in diagnostics and healthcare. However, along this path, people have many fears and concerns that are holding them back and making them sometimes not allies, but rather timid opponents of any innovations. Well, I would even say that these are general considerations. In reality, there are many more fears, anxieties, risk zones, as well as myths and stereotypes. And when we talk about practice of successful implementation, this topic definitely needs to be deeply explored and studied. It's very interesting that the top 3 fears are roughly equally distributed according to our citizens' opinion. And you raised a very interesting topic, ethics. Questions of medical research ethics, the use of artificial intelligence in healthcare. For about 20 years, these issues of medical ethics have been somewhat neglected, to the point that now almost no medical school offers a course in medical ethics. The implementation of artificial intelligence is prompting rectors, ministries to consider reintroducing this course into the training of medical professionals. We have another good partner, the National Institute of Public Health, that is part of the Academy of Sciences. They will be conducting a research ethics school next week that reminds young scientists about the ethics of scientific research, including research related to the use of various digital technologies. Dear colleagues, I have a question for our speaker, Kirill. Your suggestion, your recipe for making the healthcare anti-fragile. I ask everyone this question, so what's your answer? I suspected this question would be asked. I tried to touch upon it in the beginning. The recipe, from my point of view, is very simple. This is feedback that is highlighted in the title of the forum, Sociology of Health. If we learn to obtain the necessary amount of knowledge regarding what is happening in people's minds, what their needs are, fears, anxieties, aspirations, and so on, this is a good guarantee of success, that we will navigate through this minefield with minimal losses, and where necessary, we can cushion the blow. And if we don't act upon these fears, myths, and the like, we will constantly fall into this trap. The path will definitely become longer and more difficult. But ultimately, we will make it. However, it will be a rather lengthy, complex story. At least that's how I understand this anti-fragility. Although it's clear that there are many other aspects that my colleagues have discussed today beyond feedback. But we're talking about feedback. Thank you, Kirill. Today, all our speakers talked about essentially 3 very important things related to the anti-fragility of the healthcare system. First is digitization, second is interdisciplinarity, and the third is adaptability of the healthcare system to the real, constantly changing needs of the population. And our team of our organizations are constantly moving in this direction. Summing up our plenary session, I would like to remind you, dear colleagues, that this is only the first day of our forum. Ahead of us are another 1.5 days of a rich program, and starting from 2 o'clock we will have 3 sections. They are held in person and online format, will take place in the smart city at VDNH. VDNH is the center of attraction until April 24th. There are many interesting programs there, including our 3 sections. The first will focus on gamifying healthcare processes. The second will address issues and trends in social media for medical professionals and managers. And the third section will cover qualitative research in the digital world. All start at 2 o'clock. We invite all of you to participate in this event, whether in person or remotely. Tomorrow will be all digital, starting from the early morning. Thank you for your attention and see you there.